So the reason of the show is growing up, atheists were former Christian white males. That's all I knew. And of course they were the ones that were in charge, so of course they're the ones who gave up the religion first. But as I got older, I realized that atheists were not only female, but there are also other religions and other nationalities were also atheists. So anyways, today I have with me Veronica Drantz, who is also Ronnie to her friends. And so let me ask you, growing up, what was the preferred religion of your family?
I grew up Catholic.
That's fun.
Yeah, right. I grew up in East Rogers Park here in Chicago. I was born in 1943, so Catholics were the majority, and in that neighborhood as well. But in that neighborhood there were also Lutherans and a substantial percentage of Jewish people. So that was a little different in some neighborhoods, and I was aware of that from the very beginning. I went to Catholic schools. My mother was of Irish Catholic ancestry on her father's side, and that was the side she favored. She liked to think of herself as Irish, and Irish Catholics are like the nuttiest people around. I'm sorry, but that's what I think. I was raised with them all around me, and they are the craziest of all the Catholics.
Well, my wife is Mexican, so she's Catholic.
Okay, well, I know that the Catholicism takes on different flavors with different nationalities, and I've been exposed to quite a number in my life. But still, I maintain.
Well, my good friends are Polish, and they're Catholic. And they're actually very much alike, where it's a lot of drinking involved with everything, and I'm sure that's probably true with Irish.
I went to a Polish high school. I'll get to that probably. Polish Catholic high school. My dad.
A little closer.
My dad was Alsace-Lorraine ancestry, and didn't take Alsace-Lorraine, German.
Okay.
He didn't take religion very seriously, but I think he was impressed by my mother's religiosity. He was dismayed by, finding things like scapular medals and other religious tokens pinned inside his suit coats and so on, because he had a drinking problem. My mother would be trying to put a hex on him, with these religious trinkets that had magical powers. So I remember in Catholic school, I hated the nuns. I was a little tomboy. I stuck out like a sore thumb. I didn't behave the way a little girl was supposed to, and they came after me with a vengeance. A vengeance.
Nuns are...
They destroyed my childhood. They really did. They were so mean. This particular order.
Well, you rarely hear good stories about nuns.
Well, especially if you were sort of a non-conformer. They really put the clamp on you.
I would have been one of those.
I probably would have been all drugged up back then as a kid for hyperactivity or something. So anyway, I remember, having problems with the religion. I'm sure I bought it as a little child. I did. But I had problems with it all along. I can remember even as a very young kid, because of course I was aware of these other religions. I knew that everybody probably figured their religion was the right one.
Yes.
And I know it did cross my mind that we could all be wrong. So there was that. And then there were a lot of things happening. I was reminiscing, knowing you were coming over, so I'm thinking this through, right? And I remember things that really got me going, like realizing only boys could be altar boys. That really got me. And then I guess I must have thought that nuns were like the female counterparts of priests, until one day a priest came into the classroom. And I saw how the nun was bowing and scraping with him there, and I remember that really bothered me. I didn't like that at all. So I was learning about the world in general that I didn't like. Because back then, all you ever heard was it's a man's world. It's a man's world. But, I'm also learning that it was in the church, too. It was supposed to be a good place. Supposed to be nice, fair, And I wasn't seeing that.
You keep hearing all men are created equal, but they're not.
That's not true.
at all.
Look, see this shirt? We say that about our country
Yeah.
too, and it's not true.
No, it's not true at all.
simply not true.
Yes, it's all men are created equal as long as they're white men.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, at what point did you pretty much give up the ghost and say, religion,
Well, I think it was a gradual thing that was building up, and I remember struggling with it.
Yeah.
And of course, once I was in high school, and then my family had moved, so now I'm in a whole new demographic. The neighborhood was mostly Polish and Italian, and the school itself was Polish Order of Nuns, and this was high school.
Still with the nuns.
Yeah. Oh, I was a big discipline problem.
Yeah.
Always pulling pranks.
Yeah.
Just innocent stuff, but the nuns didn't like it.
Well, I love that now nuns are referred to as people who have no religious affiliation.
Oh, well, yeah.
Which is like...
that's our English language is
Yeah.
hard that way. But, but I was a good student.
Yeah.
And science. Oh, boy. That was it.
Yeah.
I knew that's what I wanted.
Now, did you
right away.
ever get people trying to dissuade you from science, saying, "Oh, that's
well,
that's
the
for
whole
men."
culture tried to do that. Really, they tried to make me feel like my ovaries weren't working or something. There was something wrong with me because I liked it and I was good at it. On top of it all, But I loved it, and unlike religion, which I was learning. Oh, by the time I got to college, I'm at University of Illinois, Navy Pier. It's a good thing that I discovered about the Holocaust by accident.
Yeah.
When I was a senior in high school. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known. It wasn't in the textbooks.
Yeah.
They weren't yet. I think the public in general didn't know, and I discovered through one of my father's magazines. And it was a good thing too. Oh, by the way, the nuns. I told my girlfriends, and they were very upset, and the nuns confiscated the magazine and told me to stay quiet about it and never talk about it again. They didn't want to spread any sympathy for the Jewish people. Yeah. I was...
Really?
Yeah, I was blown away by that revelation about the Holocaust. I took it really hard, being of largely Germanic ancestry. I took it really hard.
Well, my family's father's side is Jewish. And my father was in a concentration camp. Fortunately, it was the beginning part of the war before things got ugly, and they actually hid Jules, my father's teddy bear, and were able to bribe their way out. So they made it out before it got ugly and made their way to America and changed the name from Levi to Leeds. But so I knew about the Holocaust.
Well, that was important for me,
Yeah.
and that had a lot. That had an impact on me when it came to my views on religion.
Yeah.
And it was a good thing that I had discovered that, because at Navy Pier there was a very large percentage of Jewish students, and a lot of them in the science and pre-med and so on. So I was surrounded by Jewish students, and I passed some kind of test or something because they just they accepted me.
So not like test, but unwritten test.
Yeah, I did something.
Somebody decided,
something I didn't know about. Yeah, right. I passed some kind of test or something, and I was kind of accepted into the subculture.
Yeah.
I even remember going to They actually had Zionist meetings at the school back then, and I remember going to them.
They're probably like, the nuns can't stand her either, so she must be okay.
Well, no, I think they didn't know that part about me. And they kind of respected that I was Catholic, at least nominally.
Yeah.
I got very close to them. That was very important because I was learning about religion. Mm-hmm. And what I learned was, it's not what they thought they were teaching me. They taught me a lot.
Yes.
And it was a very important experience for me. It was a life-shaping experience because I was still very young, right? I was just on the verge of adulthood. And for the first time in my life now, I get to be the minority. I was the only non-Jew, in this big group. And that was a very good experience for me. And to learn to look at the world through other people's eyes. Yeah. And to get to like them and care about them so much that I suffered when they suffered. Yeah. So that's really important. I think everybody that should be part of everybody's education. You know? I'm
figured,
glad I went to a public university. It was all I could afford.
Yeah.
Girls' wages.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah. I figure a good portion of the reason that I'm an atheist is half my family's Jewish. The other half is like every flavor of Christianity you can think of. So I went to a lot of different churches, and we had Christmas and Hanukkah, and I got to see all these religions, and I got to see how they all disagreed with one each other and said the other one was wrong. And the Jewish half of my family, because of basically what that family went through, they weren't religious. I mean, they were Jewish by tradition only. But just the exposure to so many different religious views helped me to understand that they were all bullshit.
Right. Well, I was seeing, how can I put this? I was finding myself to be against religion on several levels as my life unfolded, so to speak, you know?
Yes.
And so I'm against it because I'm educated as a scientist. I'm a physiologist, you know, and religion is simply untrue. It's just plain wrong, okay? It befuddles people's understanding of nature and how everything works. So that would be bad enough all by itself, okay? Number two, magical thinking.
Yeah.
It's magical thinking. And it really bothers me to know that there are people who have wasted their whole life.
Yes.
And the rest of us, I mean, I could have learned a foreign language with the time I wasted in church.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So there are people praying and doing rituals and so on, you know, and they're wasting their time and energy and resources and not doing the good that they could be doing.
Yeah.
I notice on Facebook how people say to each other, you know, oh, you'll be in my prayers. So now what I do is, now I should start identifying myself, though, as an atheist when I do that. I haven't been doing that. I should say, well, I'm an atheist, so I'm not going to pray for you. But what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Can I buy some groceries for you? Can I do your laundry? Can want to play Scrabble? You know.
Yeah.
And I think, show up.
Yes.
The religious people as the imposters that they are.
Yes.
You know, they pretend like they really care and they're going to do something for you. You be in my prayers. Oh, big deal, right? Big deal. Go over there and vacuum their house for them.
Yes. Prayer is making the most show for the least effort.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you just know they're patting themselves on the back for that.
I'm a good
me.
Christian.
Right.
I spent hours praying for them.
Right.
They'll be much better tomorrow.
Yeah. But then I also saw, as I got older and wiser, and then I came out as gay at 24. So religion does real harm.
Yes.
Oh, and what I learned from my Jewish friends, I forgot to say, was how religion divides people.
Yes.
That's what I learned.
Yes.
That's what I learned. And meanwhile, I'm seeing the science. I love being in science because you're working with people from all over the world all the time, you know?
Yes.
And science unites people. We speak the same language. I don't care what country you come from.
Yeah.
You know, what culture, it doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah.
Our understanding would be the same, and the process is the same. And
Yes.
it's pretty nifty.
It's same way with mathematics. It's anything that's based in reality, people can find commonality in it. Where religion, you're taught, oh, this is what we believe. They believe something else, but this is what we believe. And you can't understand other people if you insist on believing something that's only you believe.
Right. And then, the worst part about religion, of course, is the harm it does.
I mean, it stops people from doing what they could be doing, but it also makes people very intolerant of everyone else.
Well,
you don't believe what they believe.
You know, like you said, the white guys have been the prominent atheists.
Yeah.
And of course, it was the white guys who started all this.
Yes.
Really, I think it's a white guy serving religion.
Yeah.
At least the Abrahamic religions. I mean, you know, Native American religions are kind of benign, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there are some that are not sinister, but I think the Abrahamic religions, the ones with that Adam and Eve story, are sinister. They're evil, and there they are calling Eve the mother of all humanity, theoretically.
Yeah.
Evil.
Yeah.
I mean, what a terrible story to tell children. If ever a book should be banned, it should be the Bible. That is the bad book. We should call it the bad book.
So, how did your parents, specifically your mother, how did she take to this news?
Oh, well, of course, I wasn't talking about this as I was growing up.
Yeah.
Not with my mother, really.
Yeah.
I don't remember. That's the kind of thing you think about and you don't say it out loud. But, and my mother was like a religious fanatic.
Yeah.
She was. I mean, I can remember her at like 2 o'clock in the morning with her arms stretched out, praying to the statue of the Virgin Mary. I mean, really?
Yeah.
In May, we would have a May altar in the front room with the crepe paper, blue and white. Everybody had to kneel there, say the rosary every night. My mother, we couldn't have tomato soup on a Friday because you're not supposed to eat. Listen to this. Now, this is how crazy people get when they're a fanatic, religious fanatic. Okay. I mean, the scruples, hyper scrupulous to the point of nuttiness, right?
Well, I don't know if that beats the Jews. I mean, the Orthodox Jews,
so, for example, we couldn't have tomato soup because it had monosodium glutamate in there. My mother read that, and she looked it up, and she discovered it was an amino acid, glutamate. And then she made this leap, because my mother was pretty literate. She was a college graduate, which was kind of unusual for mothers back then. And she made the leap from amino acid to proteins. Then she made another great big giant leap from proteins to meat. And so we couldn't have tomato soup on Friday. That's what it's like when you have a nutty, religious fanatic mother.
She could have been in the Olympics. That's quite a leap she made.
That it is. Yeah. But, you know what? She died. I don't think she was an atheist, but she certainly wasn't Catholic.
Yeah.
I think she still was holding out for some kind of supernatural something or other. But it was so vague and fuzzy, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And there was no extreme unction or any other religious fussing. And I remember hollering and driving out to the Catholic, whatever, the clergy person who comes around and pesters people when they're dying. Yeah. In fact, my whole family was saved, hallelujah, by me. I was like the first atheist in the family. And then everybody just followed suit. I remember in my adulthood giving my mom all my feminist books. That was when in my 30s, so that would have been about 40 years ago. And she read them all, and she'd call me up, and she was so angry. And that had a lot to do with her turning around on religion and just sort of seeing the world for the first time, getting it, what was going on. You know, and boy, was she angry.
I try to tell you.
And then I'm the big sister. I have two younger brothers, and they just sort of followed me.
Yeah,
you know,
my parents knew I was an atheist before I even knew what an atheist was. The church we went to, the priest knew I was an atheist before I knew it was. They still think I'm going to grow out of it. In fact, my stepmother and my little sister, partly due to events that were started by the fact that I'm outspoken in the videos that I'm doing, they don't speak to me anymore because, like, atheist bullshit, that's just garbage. It makes me sick. Like, really?
Well, we need to come out. I was very shocked. You know, being in the sciences, it was kind of easy for me to be an atheist. And I've never hidden it, never. Although I have suffered over it. I mean, I think I've run into some discrimination professionally because of it. But still, it was easier for me. And I was very surprised to discover that so many atheists are closet atheists.
Yes, me too. And that's... And that's one of my objectives.
And that needs to stop. And just like gay people, until we came out, people thought all sorts of goofy stuff about us. Okay? Yeah. And the same thing goes for atheists. We need to come out.
Now, you bring up being gay. Which did your family take, I guess, better or worse? When you came out as atheist or came out as gay?
Like I said before, the atheist part, I never had any issues with them over that. By that, by the time they knew that, I was grown and successful, and as I said, they started looking at things my way. Yeah. So that was not really a problem. And the gay part, I think my brothers always knew, and that was cool. One of my brothers is gay.
Yeah.
My mother, I thought she knew. I thought she had figured it out. And at 32, I sat down with her and was surprised to discover she hadn't yet figured it out. And I remember trying to explain to her what it was like being gay, or how hard that was.
It's funny. I had the opposite experience.
Okay.
My family thought I was gay.
Oh, okay.
And it took a while for me to figure out that's what they thought. And I was like, why would you think that? I mean, I was like chasing after girls from 5 years old. I was interested in girls. What made them? But I was a creative guy, the artsy guy. Hanging around with the artsy people. I remember in college, a lot of my friends were gay, and my father goes, you hang around those people, and people think you're that way. I was like, yeah, so. So he's like, oh man. But so
it's interesting.
Yeah. I never had any problem with it, and I just thought it was kind of funny that they thought that, and so I let them think it. So now you're grown and you're affecting the world in science. Now I watched one video of your lecture. What specifically is your area of study or expertise?
Well, I've most of my life I've been an educator, not a researcher.
Okay.
And I teach medical people still. So I've taught all kinds of medical people, technologists, medical doctors, and for about 40 some years I've taught all the science in a nurse anesthesia program. It's now a doctoral program. So I teach primarily physiology and related sciences like molecular biology and all the I teach physics for anesthetists and all the typical anatomy and physiology courses you would expect, in a medical program. So that's what I do professionally. And in the past, I was in a university where I was the founder of a program in electroneurodiagnostic technology, the first of its kind here in Chicago.
You'll have to explain what that is.
People who do EEGs and evoked potentials, polysomnography, interoperative monitoring, looking at the electrical activity of the nervous system for diagnostic purposes. So I did that for a long time. I've got a lot of former students out there now who are medical professionals. And as I said, I'm still teaching nurse anesthetists in this doctoral program. But in recent years, I have switched from public speaking about medical technology to matters dealing with LGBTI people. And
there's a very good video of you doing the lecture. Lecture, which I'll put the link to that in the description, so you can check that out. But it seems obvious how that would have come about, but
well, actually it came about because there was finally enough science for me to talk about it. When I first started thinking about some of this stuff, there wasn't any science really on humans per se.
It's basically
it wasn't much I could say, so I had to wait. And it's been unfolding over the last 50 plus years.
I remember even as a kid, my cousin's gay, and it was always kind of viewed as like it's a psychological problem. It's a mental disorder, and that never.
Well, now I'm going to plug my chapter. Okay.
That's perfect.
Right, so. And of course, when I do public speaking, it normally doesn't have anything to do with religion or that's not my thing. But I managed to get a chapter in this book, this anthology put together by John Loftus, called Christianity is Not Great, How Faith Fails, and it focuses on all the harms of Christianity. The argument being you can sort of assess the value of something by its track record. So let's look at the track record of Christianity. Well, anyway, my chapter is a contribution about, it's entitled The Gender Binary and LGBTI People, Religious Myth and Medical Malpractice. So that kind of tells you what it's about,
and
right?
that's pretty much what the video is.
Yes. And my chapter wound up in here because I'm identifying the Adam and Eve story. as the reason for the grief of LGBT and I people, because we are not in that story.
Yeah.
And we are not Adams or Eves. But we are just as natural
Yes.
as the people who are. And the theme that resounds through every presentation I give is that difference does not equal disorder.
Yes.
Yeah, we're different.
I mean,
but not disorder.
yeah.
The Catholic Church, my favorite religion, Catholic Church still maintains that gay people are, quote, intrinsically disordered, unquote, in spite of what the American Psychiatric Association or what the psychologists think, or now, they're medical authorities.
Well, I mean, religion plays a big part in basically screwing up the way people think. I've done a couple of videos on this, and most people think of sexuality as either A or B, and sometimes C. I mean, you're either, male or female, or, gay or straight. And now being bisexual is more, I don't want to say more common, but it's less like, what's wrong with those people? But I've noticed that, as much as a lot of straight people have a problem with gay people have a problem with bisexuality, which has always surprised me. And it's
I think straight people do too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So why praise it like that? We're no different than you guys.
Well,
just people have a problem with bisexuality.
Yeah. Well, I think it's that everybody, and I think it's due to religion, they want to fit in a category. They want to say, I'm either this or this. I mean, bisexuality, I've always...
Well, that's a category.
Yeah. Well, but bisexuality is got a lot more gray area. I mean, you can be bisexual and be attracted to somebody but not sexually attracted, and you can be bisexual and
that's the same for everybody.
Well, it is, but most people identify as being straight because they're only
probably are there more bisexuals than gay people. Probably.
Yeah. I've always kind of stood by the idea that there's probably 50% of all people are probably bisexual.
They would be in a
degree.
position to really know what heterosexual privilege is.
Yes.
Because they usually have the opportunity to experience it, at least at some points in their life. And then at other times, they get to see the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's why they don't always want to admit, that they're bisexual.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think the majority, or not majority, at least half the people are to some degree bisexual. And to me, that seems to be an advantage socially. It's like I'm as straight as they come. I mean, I'm so straight that being hit on by a guy doesn't bother me at all because.
Well, you know what Kinsey found?
Yeah.
No two people alike.
Yeah.
You know why he found that?
Why?
I mean, yeah. Actually, what he brought to the study of human sexuality, that the medical doctors didn't. How come the medical doctors didn't find out what Kinsey found out?
Because they didn't want to find it.
Okay, yeah. But I think he was a beetle guy,
yeah.
Right? He looked at beetles one after another. He was a biologist, not a medical person. I wrote this because I'm a biologist. I teach medical people. I'm not a medical person. So differences to me are wonderful. Not something I want to eradicate. Okay? I don't have an agenda like that. And what did Kinsey know? He knew that no two beetles alike.
Now,
No two beetles alike. So if there's no two beetles alike, what do you think about people?
No two people alike.
That's really pretty much what he found. What he, you can argue about the numbers and how representative his groups were and so on, but you can't argue with the overall finding.
Yeah.
He found this enormous diversity, that everybody really was unique in their sexuality, and that, and now I think what the science is showing is sexuality is a multiple continua.
Yes.
Not just sexual orientation that you've been already alluding to already, but gender identity, which is the thing that got me going on this research project. It started me doing the public speaking, and even your physicality. that not everybody is a standard male or
Yeah.
female physically. There
Yeah.
are people who are intersex. And
Well, transgender people are I don't want to say making the headlines, but they're especially it seems like the last couple of months it's been very present. In fact, I wrote a blog on that recently, and Seth Anderson on his show.
they're making news in a couple of ways, right? I mean, in a good way,
Yeah.
in that they're finally getting some good publicity and some truth, so to speak, and in a bad way because they continue to get murdered right and left, especially the black trans women.
Yeah.
Trans people in general are really getting dumped on badly.
Yeah. It's unfortunately it's a tough position to be in, and
they really threaten that gender binary.
Yeah.
And why does the Bible start out with that Adam and Eve story? Why does it start out with it?
Well,
because I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
It's framing the entire book for you.
Yeah.
And people always remember the beginning of something. They never remember the middle. And I don't know what the end of the Bible is. What is the end? I don't know what the end is. But there's certainly a beginning.
Yeah.
People always remember that.
Yeah.
And it orders our entire social structure, doesn't it? Everything you do, you got to go and check one of those two boxes as if that it's that simple.
Yeah.
And we all know from Biology 101. I mean, that should be the question on the final exam in Biology 101. Discuss the Adam and Eve story. Or better yet, Noah's Ark. That's my favorite goofy story.
That's one guy keep me out of Sunday school.
But they both, rely on this just two kinds,
Yeah.
male and female, and it's all about reproduction.
Yeah.
Name of the game. But that gender binary, that two groups, I have to say this, and make an Eve evil.
Yeah.
Although it wasn't her sin that mattered, it was Adam's sin.
Yeah.
She's of no consequence, really, but she's the temptress. The whole story is to justify the misogyny in the Bible.
Yes.
So that was the other lesson that I learned in my life, is that religion justifies injustice.
Very much so.
That's what it does. It justifies injustice. And that Adam and Eve story was the source of the mistreatment of women, the source of the mistreatment of all queer people.
Yeah.
Everybody except Adam.
Who I'm sure was a white male.
That's the way he was usually drawn when I saw him in the books.
It always amazes me how nobody
God
ever
too,
argues
an angry old white male.
Yeah.
Head of the Tea Party up there.
Yeah. I actually refuse when I refer to God. I never say him or her. I was always it. God is an it to me. I don't think there is a God, but if there was a God, God's an it. God isn't male. I mean, God's just
I don't know
a big bully. But no, it always strikes me, not funny, but just how people just completely accept Jesus as a white male with blonde hair and blue eyes from the Middle East.
Well, if you're here in the United States, in certain pockets, you might. But as you go around the world, Jesus does get depicted differently. Well, I was recently in Mexico.
Well, no, Mexico is...
Now, their Jesus really... You should go in their churches and you should see how Jesus is represented in Mexico versus an American church in the U.S. The Jesuses in those Mexican churches really bleed. I mean, they got blood going down the legs.
In Mexico,
he's really suffering, boy.
Jesus is
the Mexican
torture
Jesus
porn.
Really suffers.
Yeah.
We couldn't tolerate that here. We'd be complaining it's too painful to look at.
Yeah.
So our Jesus is all cleaned up.
Yeah, we have a nice clean Jesus. Yeah, that's
right.
the one thing in Mexico. Is Jesus. It's torture porn. And a good portion of my family. My wife is Mexican, so a good portion of my in-laws. Well, they're all Mexican, but the kids pass around these images of Jesus being tortured because they're like.
Oh yeah,
really
well,
into
in the
it.
Catholic religion, suffering is glorified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is another bizarre thing.
It is, but that's you're suffering like Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's supposed to make you holy. I remember my mother telling me when I was little, and she was pregnant with one of my brothers, that her doctor, who was an Irish Catholic, refused to do anything to alleviate discomfort because in the Bible it said, that women were supposed to suffer when they're giving, birth and so on. Yeah. Yeah, I was the doctor. Yeah, all these things stick in your head when you're a girl growing up, and you're thinking someday maybe that'll be me. No.
Yeah.
Gee.
Yeah, it makes you wonder why people wanted to have kids.
Yeah.
Knowing that was what the store. But, people like Mother Teresa, the teaching was to suffer is to be closer to God. So if you're suffering, you're closer to God. People wanted to be closer to God, so they thought, I'll suffer because it'll bring me closer to God. And
Pretty sick.
that's deeply disturbing. But
well, I remember reading Lives of the Saints, and there's another book that should be banned. I mean, really, because here they are flogging themselves and doing other, masochistic things, and that's supposed to be holy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's in Iran. It's I don't know if it's Muslim, but the guys who take basically knife blades on ropes and flog themselves with knife blades. Okay. I mean, where the knives stick in them, and they think they're doing this wonderful thing. That they're
I'm
being
sure the
close to
people
God.
who are in charge of everything and who are not getting flogged are benefiting from all of this, because if people accept suffering, you can dump all over them.
Yeah.
And isn't that what we did to slaves here? We promise them heaven and give them hell here on earth. But there's the other thing. See, this life came out of a woman's body.
Yeah.
And the Abrahamic religion is like a phallic worship cult, isn't it? It is. And it's a death cult.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, but you guys, you kind of do have a death worship thing going on. Like, how do you get to be a hero in this culture? You go and kill a lot of people in a war. And when you read the history books, when I was a kid, it was just one battle after another after another.
Yeah. To be a hero, you have to fight.
But you got to kill.
Yeah.
And destroy things. And if you die giving life, a woman dies in childbirth, there's no holiday for her. We don't have a holiday. There's no special cemetery for people who die giving life, but there's one for people who die taking life. Well, even Jesus had to get killed in the death cult.
We were talking about...
so that's the life, that this male God gives you, this afterlife. You have to discount this life that comes out of a woman's body.
And that's why you're born in sin.
Isn't that the nastiest thing? Original sin? Yeah. I mean, that's like what we do here in the public schools, where I get in arguments with suburban people over this. They almost always wind up justifying the crappy treatment of the kids in our Chicago public schools by blaming the parents, for their sins. Yeah. Pointing out the ne'er-do-well fathers and the child mothers and so on and so forth, as if that's a good reason, to punish the kids. But isn't that what the Abrahamic religions do? They're punishing all of the kids of Adam, the original sin. Isn't that mean and ugly? How come people accept that? I always thought that was really nasty.
I mean, go forth and multiply was a punishment.
I mean, it's very un-American, isn't it? At least in principle, although in practice we do it all the time. But I mean, we like to think that it doesn't really matter the status of your parents,
people are always finding some reason to put somebody else down, no matter what it is.
But that whole concept of original sin, which all these religions rely on, is so ugly. Why do people accept it?
Because their parents accept it. I mean, it's a tradition. It's tradition. People have always accepted it, so why should we change now? Okay. So what if it makes the world a better place? It always
bothered me. I always thought it was a nasty thing to do. How many generations removed are we now from this Adam and Eve, and we're still being punished for that? Oh well, Jesus had to die. Yeah. So we could go to heaven.
Yeah. Which I've never understood that argument. I mean, here's a guy who is God. I mean, Jesus is God, and Jesus came to earth, so impregnated Mary with magic,
Well, that was the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
As a dove. Pretty weird.
Well, which is also good.
Pretty
God.
weird.
So Jesus is God, but he came to earth so he could suffer like a person and be tortured and brutally beaten and murdered to forgive people's sins when they could have just forgiven the sins.
What?
But he knew he's God, so he knew he would rise again and not be dead. So he didn't really die for your
Right.
sins. He
he just went through the motions.
He went through a big show.
Yeah, right.
So he didn't, really, he's God, so he didn't really suffer because, it's... So basically, you're worshiping the guy for going, put on a show. It's a magic trick.
Right.
He put on a magic trick and to forgive your sins, but you still have sin because you're born of sin.
Well, it's all symbolic.
Yeah.
He had to be sacrificed.
Yeah.
Like we used to sacrifice animals,
Yeah.
right?
Still do.
Still do, yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
I'm not a vegetarian, but I live pretty much as a vegetarian. In fact, I drove by a meat market, and I was disgusted that it's like, I forget what it's called, something food center or whatever. But all they had were pictures of meat, no vegetables, no fruit, just meat, and it made me ill. I was like, killing is such a part of humanity that we teach killing. Killing is part of who we are, as if that were an important part. And yet, we say right to lifers. Right to lifers. The right to fetuses, what they are.
Well, I love to say to people, I'm a pro-lifer myself.
I'm a pro-lifer too.
I'm pro-spotted owl,
Yeah.
pro-gray wolf,
Yes.
pro-snail darter.
Yeah.
I'm pro-life in all its many forms. That's what bothers me, is that people only care about
the fetus.
one species and then as a fetus.
Because as soon as it's born, then it's got no rights.
Right.
Then it's on its own. And it doesn't matter what the woman has to go through to give birth to that child. I mean, she could suffer to the world because that's what she's there for. She's there to suffer and serve for the fetus. But once the fetus is born, then it's and who is most for capital punishment? The pro-lifers, which boggles my mind.
Well, but it's not about really life.
Oh, no, it's not at
I think
all.
it's about control.
It is.
It's about control of women.
Yes.
In order to be in control of the next generation.
Yes.
I think these guys have a giant case of womb envy.
Yes.
I mean, not that they really want to go through what women go through to give life.
not at all.
I don't think they could handle that. But they want that power
Yes.
that nature didn't give them.
Yes.
And the only way they can take control of the reproductive process is to take control of the women.
Yes.
And that's what this is all about. So now it's getting hard to tell the difference between Catholics and Republicans. What's going on? I mean, no, really, Republicans
No, it's
continue to turn my body into a political battleground all my life.
yes.
But it has always some religious justification.
Well,
It's really about control.
Like I mentioned, it was the last election that really kind of put me on this path of being outspoken, because religion has become such an integral part of the Republican process. I mean, the Democrats are bad enough, but the Republicans have become insane with religion, and it's all these men. They're all in control of women's health care. All these men are deciding what's right for women's health care, and what's right is that they don't get any. And shut down all the Planned Parenthoods, and make sure they don't have any rights, and make sure they don't have any funding, and make sure they can't do anything other than what we tell them to do.
That's right.
And
So what do you call that, if not sort of a symbolic form of womb envy?
Well, I never thought of it that way, but you're kind of right. I mean, they want control of what they cannot have control of, which is another symptom of religion.
Well, that's the Abrahamic religion. That's
They-
that
they-
Adam
they-
and Eve thing.
They want to be gods. They want to be all powerful. I mean,
Well, listen to how these religious people talk. It
Yeah.
blows me away. We are made in the image and likeness of God.
Yeah. How convenient.
And then they think they're going to be immortal. In other words, they want to be like gods themselves. They're saying they're like gods.
Yes.
They're in the image and likeness of God. Whoa.
That's crazy egotistical. I mean, I always get accused of, you're an atheist because you want to be like God. Like, I don't think there is a God. Why would I want to be like nothing? I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. But most religious arguments don't make any sense. Unfortunately, they've been taught not to think, so they don't.
Right. It's all emotional.
Yes. So, well, anything else you would like to discuss?
I guess not. Except I would like people to read my chapter.
Here, hold up.
Christianity is not great. The whole book is great.
So that title
Prometheus Books.
That title
and you can get the
little...
Kindle version too.
Yes.
So just Google it.
And which is your chapter?
Mine is chapter 12.
Chapter 12.
And it really talks about the harm that religion has done to LGBTI people through the medical profession.
What's I again?
I is for intersex, which I discussed briefly in here. So roughly the first half of my chapter, if you got some science buffs out there, they'll like my chapter, because I summarize the highlights of the last 50 plus years on the science of sexual development, including gender identity, sexual orientation, intersex people. And I do this so that I can then talk about how the medical profession has treated us, so that people can see how the medical profession judiciously ignored all the science and just ruthlessly kept enforcing the gender binary.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was crazy, and then I woke up one morning I wasn't crazy anymore. They actually voted me not crazy. I mean, how stupid is that? Don't you wish we could do that for glioblastoma stage 4 and, coronary artery disease? We took a vote. Don't worry about it. You're fine.
Well,
there was no science there.
Well, I prayed for you. It'll be fine tomorrow.
So, the magical thinking can then turn into something really ugly.
Yeah. Well, speaking of science, I always find it amazing how Christians especially, and I only point them out because I talk to them the most, how they've taken ownership of science. Like, we only have science because of Christians. Christians are what invented science. Which, like,
where do they get that from?
Well, they're
simply not
delusion. But they bring up all these scientific things, and the people who came up with these discoveries most likely were Christians, but everybody was a Christian.
Their discoveries had nothing to do with the fact that they were
exactly.
Christian.
And most of them got
they were
harassed.
Also mostly European.
Yeah.
So,
but a lot of these guys got ostracized for these discoveries because they implied God might not be real. And it wasn't until centuries later, like, these good Christians came up with all these good ideas. So I think right now, because science is on a threshold of learning so many things with genetics, in 50 years, all the Christians will be like, we came up with that stuff. I mean, Ken Ham said, MRIs. The only reason we have MRIs is because a true believer came up with it. I'm like, not because he was a true believer. I mean, he might have been one, and he might even think the Earth is 6,000 years old.
I've had contact with a lot of Muslim folks too, and some of them will talk about Muslim science.
Yeah. Oh, Muslim science. That's
like right, and there's Jewish science, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's only science.
But they condemn it now, and I think that's one of the reasons why there's such pushback for, for everything, is because they see their power dwindling away.
Of course, yes.
And they want to make a big show. And then in 50 years, they're going to forget about the big show and like, we did all that stuff. That's our stuff.
Right.
But
the Scopes monkey trial.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it ever ended. We're still in the midst of it, right? Faith versus reason.
Yeah. I argue with people about evolution every single day.
Yeah.
A guy from the Atheist experience, Russell Glasser, he did a talk at Gateway to Reason. And he had a chart showing how the internet, how people's religious views basically became more and more atheistic right at the same point that the internet came about. And as the internet grew, the number of people with atheistic viewpoints grew.
Yes.
Which we're going to get to a point where being an atheist will be
the internet was a large part of the recent successes of the LGBT people also. I don't know what we'd do without the internet. Thanks to Alan Turing, who was queer as a $3 bill. So there you go.
And he's another guy. It's like he found it perfectly acceptable, and he couldn't understand why people had a problem with it.
Right.
I mean, to him, it was normal. I mean, and why anyone? I mean, I know a lot of gay people, and I put myself in their position. I knew at a very young age I liked girls. I can imagine if I was young and I liked boys, it would have been no different. I knew what I liked, and there was nothing odd about it. So how other people who can't understand that are so bent out of shape about what somebody else likes,
Right. Yeah.
I
know. Lack of empathy.
Yes. Yeah, religion
But
definitely
when
does
you
not
other
sympathy.
people,
Yes,
you know, and dehumanize
Yes.
people,
And
that's what happens.
That's what religion is also very effective
and
at,
that's what
dehumanizing people.
that's what religion does.
Which seems...
It justifies
Yes.
injustice.
Yes.
So I remember when there was nothing lower than a queer, and there was nothing too cruel that you could do
Yes.
to a queer. And where did they get that notion from?
From being good Christians.
Yeah.
And good Catholics and good Muslims and
Yeah.
good Jews. And,
They murdered
and-
some of
yeah.
my
Oh, yeah.
friends, you know.
No.
Well,
Well,
I'm
I-
sure
I-
you
I-
know
I-
that
I-
many
I-
gay
yeah.
people
Oh, yeah.
have committed suicide.
yeah.
Some more slowly, some just drink themselves to death or whatever, trying to
Yeah.
anesthetize themselves in this
I mean, I
cruel world.
I can't even...
Who do you
know,
think put these people in their grave? Who do you think I hold
Yeah.
responsible?
I,
People who go to
yeah.
church.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very fortunate being white male. And people say, why do you want to bash white privilege? Like, because I have it, and I acknowledge it. I'm very lucky to be a white male, but I cannot imagine having a life where everyone is telling me I'm wrong.
Right.
Something's wrong with you. You think you're normal, but you're not.
And
It's like-
for gay people,
Yeah.
what you're doing is you're taking what should be their greatest joys,
Yes.
you know, the love
Yes.
of your life kind of thing, and
Well-
turning it into something that needs to be secret and
Yeah.
shameful and ugly and
Well, that's-
awful.
But when it comes to sex, that's true with everyone. I mean,
I'm talking not just about
Well, not-
sex. Don't reduce
well,
it to
I'm not-
sex.
I'm not trying to reduce it, but
It's
I mean,
love.
yes, but I mean
It's
joy,
emotional.
the joy of life. Religion is
It's-
not suffering. Anything that you find joy in life, religion finds a way of saying that it's bad and you shouldn't do it. Just
Yeah.
sex is the most, well, not the most, but it's pretty joyful.
Do all religions do that?
Pretty much all religions look at sex
mean-
as if it's
Oh.
as if
Well,
it's a bad
if you're
thing.
controlling women,
Yes,
yeah.
but even
then,
men. I mean,
you know,
it's
well,
I mean, you know.
men have this
but-
role to
yeah,
play as
yeah.
the controllers.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
like masturbation.
So-
masturbation is taught to be this horrific thing that you're going to hell if you do it,
Yeah.
whether you be male or female. And females don't do that. That's how would they do? I talk to people. It's like women don't masturbate. How can they masturbate? Like, who teaches you? And then I realize it's like nobody's teaching them anything. They're teaching, don't think, just do whatever we tell you. Just think whatever we tell you to think, and don't go outside of this box. Just stop thinking. Stop trying to, I got into a discussion of homeschooling. The only people who homeschool are those who restrict the amount of information that their kids get. That's the only people who want to homeschool. Nobody
Yes.
wants to homeschool to embetter their kids. They want to keep their
Well,
kids under control.
And they must think that they must really have a very inflated idea of themselves to think that they know that much.
Very much so.
That they know it all. They know everything that all the various teachers year after year would know. I mean,
Yeah.
and of course, to me, they seem to be just the opposite, those folks.
But,
I feel sorry for their kids.
But the whole, being made in God's image, only if you conform to this very specific mold. If you don't conform to this, then you're not.
I feel sorry for those folks, don't you? I mean, it
Oh.
must be lousy to be them. They must be so afraid.
Oh, that's what they. Most
You
people,
know,
I think they argue with me
There's
because
xenophobia
they're
and everything, and the
terrified.
world's shrinking, and people keep
Yeah.
moving around,
Yeah.
and
They're-
things changing. Yeah,
They're terrified to think that they might be wrong. I mean, I love when I'm wrong. Well, I don't love when I'm wrong, but I love the fact that there's always more that I can learn. Where religious people, they know it all, and they're terrified that something's going to come.
Right.
And
no, I'm just glad
up.
to get closer and closer to the truth.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And they're trying to run from it.
Oh. It just, I mean, the political process, or not political, but the Republican political process seems to be getting dumber and dumber and dumber.
Yeah.
And they're saying the most, I mean, look at Trump.
Well, again, it's all about control, isn't it?
What?
I see it as very similar to what's going on.
But I think it's gone past that.
It's the same people, that want to control women.
Yeah. But it's like they don't. They're losing control because they've lost sight of the fact that they think being stupid is a virtue. I mean, they literally think being stupid is a good thing.
Well, stupid is the story that has served them so well for so long.
Yes.
They can't think of anything better. And people are getting smart now.
Yeah.
And they're just, clinging to the stupid.
Yeah.
Right.
And they want everybody else to be stupid so that they'll think.
And they keep saying things like, what is happening to our world? And they mean their world, as if no one else should have any claim in the world. And that's what's bothering them.
Yes.
The world is getting a little fairer.
I know some Native Americans, and if you want to see them get irritated, just say Christian nation.
Oh yeah.
Like,
right.
No, not till you people showed up.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. This country was built on secularity, not Christian values. And the whole purpose of this country was to get away from religion being part of the political process. The whole reason this country started was because people who didn't think what the England thought came here so they could express it, and they realized that we don't want to confine people to belief, but now that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to confine everyone to be, Christian.
Well, and that which makes America so special. I mean, I know a lot of people from around the world, and they agree with me when I say that what makes America different is that we really value the individual. It isn't like we don't think of ourselves as members of a clan or a family group or caste, or you know what I mean? And we are kind of different, even from England that way. The value of the individual.
But
it's a good note to end on, because this chapter of mine really is arguing that the medical profession should not only not be enforcing that binary, but recognizing the individuality in each and every patient, and striving for what's best for the well-being and health of that individual patient. We are on the verge now of individualized medicine. We've now, got the technology to do it and the science, but we have to have the value system too. We have to have the heart to go along with the head, And that's really been the American ideal, to value the individual. I can't think of any more important or fundamental human right than the right to be who you are.
Yes.
And that's what LGBTI people are fighting for. And on behalf of everybody different. And we're all different in certain ways.
Yes.
Everyone has the birthright to be who they are.
Definitely. Very cool.
Religion's not cool with people being who they are.
No, religion's about everyone being the same.
But nature is cool.
Yes.
Evolution is very cool, with
it's exciting
everybody
stuff.
being who they are.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time with me. And I'm Tom, your friendly neighborhood atheist, and this is Secular TV, and this has been Ronnie Drantz. See, I told you I mess it up. I mess up everyone's saying. So, thanks for watching. Ta-da!